It's Monday, December 5th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple podcast.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, welcome to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris Quinn. I'm joined by your other co-host, Mike Shalau. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, Chris. I'm good.
I think that's the best intro I've done in at least a year.
You really nailed it. How are you, Chris?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm doing fine. We had, since we've been on last,
Big Kelly Clarkson pod.
yeah, that was that who sings that. Yeah, it's. I think we have.
Like
it was. We haven't been on since Thanksgiving, right?
That was like last week, wasn't it?
Was it?
Was it 2 weeks ago? I don't know.
It was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
This is hour 12 of a
Yeah.
day for me, so cut me
So
some
I had Black Friday.
Uh-huh.
That was interesting.
Didn't sell a single bottle of it, huh?
No. Yeah, it was a shame. Yeah, it was interesting. The man himself, Greg Hall, was here on Black Friday. He was here.
He bought an allocation.
He bought an allocation.
That's cool.
Yep. When I saw him, he was drinking Celebration.
Nice.
It was his first of the year. He had drank mostly that, and he drank a bunch of Honkers. I think he really likes Honkers.
Honkers is delicious.
And he was there surrounded by a bunch of like sales staff. I think he was on kind of like a boondoggle or what, I don't know what you want to call it, but he was on like one of these.
Boondoggle?
No, not a boondoggle.
Oh, I guess that's kind of a boondoggle. It was like on like a tour.
He was on they were on this like, tour of where they had to go. And but he was very much different in demeanor, appearance, and age compared to all the sales staff, for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And they all left, and then he stuck around for another couple hours, and we ended up having a little Stammtisch or whatever. Literally, we were drinking it, but it was like we had a motley crew of regulars, me and him. I think everyone else kind of knew someone, but not everyone, and there were only four of us. Mm-hmm. So, I knew everyone, I guess, but I don't really know Greg that well.
You're not gonna like introduce everyone to each other or anything like that.
No.
So, introduce yourself. You're your first time on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I mean,
introduce yourself to Greg Hall.
Nah, we were all just sitting there talking,
I'm kidding.
So it was fine. But that was fun. He had glowing things to say, prompted about. He was talking about how he was in Austria and he was at the Trumer Brewery in Austria and how it blew his mind, and it was one of the best lagers, if not, I don't know, he might have said best, I don't know. He definitely said one of the best lagers I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
At the Austrian, he's like, the one from Berkeley is good, and that's what we get here in the U.S. He's like, but the stuff in Austria is amazing. So he must have just had that recently because he was going on about that.
I'm sure the one if you go to Berkeley, I'm sure it's even better than when you get it here.
True.
You also have vacation palate, if you're in like another country and you're drinking their beer, you're like, oh, this is the best beer I've ever had.
Perhaps. And then I went to Delilah's for the second time in a week.
It's my favorite bar in the world outside of the Beer Temple.
Yeah. I think it's not outside of Beer Temple. It might be my favorite bar.
Yeah, me too.
So I went there on Tuesday night because Boston Joe was in town.
Nice.
Haven't said that name on air for a while, and
he doesn't even sound like a real person.
No, and me and my imaginary friend walk in.
Boston Joe. That's when Chris gets real drunk. He starts seeing double. It's like Boston Joe is there. It's like 19 drinks.
Philly Chris and Boston Joe.
Yeah, right. Two really agreeable dudes.
Yeah. So we rolled in
batteries
there.
at Santa Claus.
We were drinking here, and then we went there. at like midnight.
Oh, it's always a good move.
Always a good move. The
really slow the
bartender,
night down.
Mike, not Mike Miller, but Flat Top Mike, hasn't seen Joe in probably pre-COVID at least. Hey, what's up? Remembers him. I mean, that guy is the best bartender I know of.
Yeah, incredible.
He remembers like what you like and drink and from years ago.
And that is a high volume bar. Like it's a
Yes.
high volume bar that does a very like elite whiskey service too.
Yeah.
That they remember like
Well, he remembers who. Yeah,
who spends
yeah. So we definitely threw down. That's I think the only bar where I just kind of. Well, you've been there with
whatever
me.
it is.
You've been there when I've been in that mood.
Oh yeah.
And it can get a little hairy. So
And it gets there fast, but you never regret it. It's never
No,
one of those
I don't
places.
regret it.
Sometimes I'll look at a tab and I'll be like, "Oh, really?" But there, I'm just like, "Whatever." I don't even look. Just to
Yeah.
And then you look the next day, you're like, maybe that was a little much." But like,
but I'll tell you one thing.
you're always getting. Sorry, go ahead.
I remember like what I have and how much I enjoyed it. I rarely remember how much I spent though. So
Oh yeah.
So it isn't like if it was like a crushing amount of money, I would remember how much I spent.
Right. I mean, you can do that there if you really wanted to.
If you wanted to, you'd have to try.
It's also when you go there and you're in that mode, you're genuinely going to have things that you probably can't have anywhere else, or that would be even more expensive if you were to go somewhere else to get them. So
Yeah. So it's one thing that we've been trying to do. So he Mike, the bartender, was talking about, hey, you guys like scotches here. There's this Ben Nevin. It's like, these bottles never come around anymore. And if you want to treat yourself, it was like $30 for an ounce,
that's not bad.
Which we then laughed at, and it ended up being, I think, the cheapest.
He knew
the
that
cheapest
too.
thing yeah, right.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll just ease you into this one.
Right.
So we had some beers as well, but we did something I've been wanting to do for a while, which was having King Kong versus Godzilla, which is the King Kong of whiskeys. It's an American, King Kong. I mean, he's not from America, King Kong, but it's an American
very much
movie.
not from America. If you read the subtext of the movie.
American movie.
Sure.
And an American monster, an American-made monster.
Pappy.
No. Kind of, though. The Delilah's 15-year anniversary, which I think is 15-year Pappy Rye, which was released the next year as 16-year aged Pappy Rye.
Right.
But it's
like the only time that was released.
the only time ever.
And they were. I like to think they're like, oh, Mike Miller thought this was good. We should probably release it as
I
something.
mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I put that up against Yamazaki 18, which was obviously Godzilla.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And
I gotta think that the 15-year-old rye killed that.
you would think.
It didn't.
I wanted it to win badly.
Damn.
So I think it's official then. Until something defeats it, Yamazaki 18 is my favorite whiskey. I mean,
Wow.
it went up against Delilah was 15-1.
I mean,
Masney was there. Masney preferred the 15.
I'm pretty sure the 13. I don't even know if they have it anymore. Was my favorite whiskey of all time.
Okay.
I think that was like a KBD pick, a Kentucky Bourbon Distillers, like before the pre-hype, like before everything got crazy.
Before the hype.
Yeah, that was like the best whiskey I've ever had. But that's like my sweet spot is the 13 to 15-year-old American whiskey. It's still my favorite thing to drink if I'm having with spirits.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of other stuff, but
Yeah.
that's still my favorite stuff.
Yep. I was Yamazaki 18. I don't know. It's so good. It's so darn expensive now too. It's so much more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
I guess all that stuff is, frankly.
I was
Same
talking
with Pappy.
Who was that? I was talking to someone about this the other day when it's probably Ari when we were like he went to school in Wisconsin. He's like, yeah, there's this liquor store up by where I went to school in Beloit where we would just walk in and they would have multiple years of Pappy Van Winkle, like multiple vintages of it, and it was cheap and they would be on sale and it's like, but then it's like one of those things where it was there for years and years and years, and then one day someone came in, knew what it was, and bought all of it, and then yeah. And when we were working at West Lakeview Liquors, we were like, there was a 20-year-old Willett single barrel that was like $160 a bottle. And we were like, that's crazy. That's so expensive when we're like 21-year-olds. And now we're just like, we should have bought
Yeah, right.
like every case of that. Like we're idiots.
But that's what it was worth back then.
Right. Right. And that's when like Weller 12 was $22, $29.
Exactly.
And we were talking about how like, you know, the
Yamazaki 18 was probably less than $100 back then.
part of the reason I'm like, I haven't bought whiskey in so long. I bought a bunch of it for a long time, but also like the part of the fun was that you could get stuff like that was a great value. Mm-hmm. And at $29, maybe even like $45, $50, Weller 12 is an excellent value and a great experience. But like whatever you have to pay for it now, it's like, that's not that good. No. And it's just like, maybe my palate was different and calibrated differently because I was drinking whiskey back then and it's different now. But like, I have a lot of that stuff now, and it's like if anything, it tastes less good than when I was drinking it then, and maybe I just don't like it as much. But like, why would you pay $300?
It was always in context of Weller 12 was always in context of how cheap it was to me.
That one specifically,
it was like, wow, this is $33.
Right.
I wasn't drinking it in the $22 era, but I was definitely drinking it in the low 30s era.
That's store dependent too.
Yeah,
like if someone, and probably when they bought it, how long it was sitting around.
But yeah, and it was good. It was great. But so then, you know, when you see it explode and take on this mythic, it's funny to see because you just have a very different relationship with it. And it is a shame because, I mean, I would drink, my daily drinker would probably be Yamazaki 12 because it used to be like $30 a bottle. And now it's like $130 a bottle.
I can't tell you how many bottles of like Elmer T. Lee was my house whiskey.
That's a great, you can't even get that
I would
anymore.
always have a bottle because it was $32. Or Elijah Craig 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Because that was $34.
Right.
They don't even make it anymore.
Nope.
They don't have an age statement on it.
No.
We're old men. We're just a couple old guys talking about, inflation.
Inflation.
Not inflation and ruin whiskey.
So anyway, so that was the first time I went to Delilah's. This is all a roundabout way of saying. So then I went to Delilah. No, I'm the one who went off on a tangent. So I did King Kong vs. Godzilla. And then I went back on Friday after the event here because the owner of Delilah's, Mr. Mike Miller, who's been on the show a couple times, did what he does best, which is pull out ancient bottles of every type of Goose Island, Bourbon County you could possibly think of, so much so that it got me to come out. It got me to come out because he had the pre, when it was actually sold bottles, you know, the ones on the plain white.
Yeah.
It was like inside out Matilda bottles that they had dot matrix printed on the outside. So he had that, and then I think he had a couple that had the old like Matilda style script on it, which both of those were screw caps, by the way.
Oh wow.
Yeah. They didn't held up as well.
Those are what, like 2003?
2004? I think 3, and then a 2000 and maybe 5 or 7 or something he had. And then there was a sizable gap. He might have had like 20, then 10, and then 13 through current. And then he had so many of the variants. He had every prop ever. He had both rares. He had all the vanillas, including the 2010. Yeah. He had just some other random stuff, like barrel-aged goose stuff as well. He had like, I think, over 30 bottles opened, just sitting there on the shelf, on the bar. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And I'm so spoiled. Mike saw me there. He's like, oh, let's just taste everything. I was like, oh, okay. And 2 hours later, I think he had like managed to get me like 3 samples and had missed both of the beer orders I had asked for. I asked for a Great Lakes Christmas for my wife, who was with me, and an Orval. Didn't get either of those. I had to reorder both of them from the other bartender because he was short-staffed. He was running around like crazy. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm just going to get out of here. And then he sees us leaving. I'm like, see you, Mike, thanks. And he was like, no, you can't leave. We have to try them all. I was like, dude, we have like 27 to go through. And he's like, hold on. And then in the next like 10 or 15 minutes, went through all of them. Just like all of them. Oh, what do you think? What do you think? And we drank through all of them. So,
And
2010 rare.
Wow, hot.
Not bad.
Okay.
If you have some, drink it or sell it now. The second batch of rare,
Was that 2017?
really good. It's tasting really good.
How much do you think that bottle cost to make?
I think I know pretty closely how much it cost. If you have any bottles of that now, maybe some of the ones that were like on like clearance at Target or something, like the year after, open them up and drink them. They are drinking real nice.
Yeah.
Everything with fruit. You know what also is cool? I'm not the biggest fan of prop generally. But it is cool to see them as like their expressions year over year. Like, what do they do with prop this year? What do they do with prop that year? That was kind of cool. All the ones with coconut are pretty faded. All the ones with fruit are fruit dominant now. All the other flavors have kind of dropped out, and just the fruit is just huge on all of those.
Nice. Is that good? Did you like that?
It's fine. A little out of balance, but I think those are not meant to be sat on for. I mean, I think some of those old props are really old. I think they're like 20. Shoot, man, it might be like 2013.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah,
I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why you have Mike Miller to have bottles of all of the props,
right,
and not sell them.
He's got to have a big basement.
I mean, he charges for it. I think he was charging like $4 for an ounce pour. So
Yeah.
he was getting his money for it. Except for rare, I think he was charging probably like $10 an ounce or something for it. People were getting it.
Yeah.
You know, people wanted to try it. He had multiple bottles of it still. I mean, he's got to be like one of the only people with like
And he's been doing that forever.
forever.
Yeah. He's got
Forever.
crazy stuff.
So yeah,
You
so
ever
I went there
do
twice.
the Jack Daniels challenge?
No, I think I've had an old Jim Beam or Heaven Hill or something there one time.
Yeah, he let me do the Jack Daniels challenge one time, and it's where he brings up a bottle from like the 70s. It's 1970 something Jack Daniels, pours that, and then doesn't tell you which one is which, and pours you a modern day Jack Daniels. And he's like, typically it goes the way that it went for me, where I'm like, well, this one's pretty good, and then this one doesn't taste like whiskey at all. And the one that's pretty good is the one from the 70s. And then he's like, what do you think the other one, like, what does it taste like? It's like banana liqueur. He's like, yeah, it tastes like bananas. Like it's like it's wild. Like if you drink Jack Daniels next to like actual whiskey, I guess it is actual whiskey, but like more artisanally produced, less push it out as fast as you can kind of.
And that's the yeast
stuff.
just going bananas?
It must be.
Literally?
Yeah, it must be that them just ripping high ester producing yeasts that ferment faster and are alcohol tolerant and create esters that don't get fully scrubbed out of the distillation process. It also just is only in the barrel for like the minimum amount of time.
Right,
it can-
exactly. So that's what I was up to.
Nice.
Yeah. You?
I was in Detroit for Thanksgiving. I went to see my girlfriend's family, lovely people up in Detroit. We went to a brewery called I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I think it's Faisan or Faisan. It's Faisan. It means pheasant in French. It's a brewery up there that makes Belgian and beers and saison, and got the whole family to come out, which I did not expect and didn't necessarily want because it wasn't in the best neighborhood, and they made many comments about that while we were going there, and I was like, listen, I didn't even say I wanted to go to
Right.
but yeah, and it was pretty rough until we actually got to this like is an industrial area that was just abandoned except for this brewery. And a lot of people at the tap room. It was great beers. Had a good time.
That's cool. I've been to a couple breweries like that. The one that I remember the most was also in Michigan, actually. And I forget. Oh my God, what's it called? Like the Rookery? It's pretty famous now in Michigan.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, something like that. And it was in just an old, I think it was wherever Maytag washing machines were from.
That's Iowa.
Whirlpool, I'm sorry. and they left, and it was just a rough town. Just rough as in like just beat up and falling apart, and no one there,
derelict
and
not taken care of.
Big old industrial, but like early 1900s industrial, just like building, not these massive ones they have in Chicago, like a smaller one. And you go in, and you don't see anyone outside. You go in, and there's a nice little crowd, and everyone's kind of happy.
Same vibe, yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
I dug that.
That's
cool.
great.
Faison.
Faison, I think, is how I would pretentiously say it.
Okay. Cool. So we're doing the show on a Monday, as sharp-eared listeners will notice. We were supposed to do it on a Tuesday. I have a stupid darts league that I had to go to, and if I didn't go, nobody on the team listens to this, so I don't care. I definitely would have not gone because I was excited about the show. We had a couple
great
guests lined
Neither
up.
of which could do Monday.
Neither of which could do Monday. So here we are. It's going to be you and
Darts
I.
wait for no man.
Darts wait for no man. We would have had to, whatever. Yeah. So that's why we're here. It's a Monday. It's just the three of us.
Well, you're a team player. You didn't want to forfeit the darts league.
We would have had to forfeit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sacrificed. You sacrificed is what I mean. So thank you for that.
I really am a martyr.
Yeah, I would say that. I'd say that's an accurate way to put it. So should we get into it, or is there any beers you've had lately? Any Faisons you've had lately, maybe that you really like?
I don't actually remember the name of the beers I had, but I had a nice wit beer and a good Saison. And they had some nice lagers and IPA and porter and stuff on as well that were all very nice.
Belgian-inspired
Belgian-inspired.
IPAs and Saisons?
You know-
Porters, I mean?
You know how it is. Yeah, but all the beers were delicious, really well made.
Well, we have two stories that I wanted to talk about. One is, it's pretty funny. It's following in the footsteps of something that we talked about on the show in the past, which is when Trillium was coming into Wisconsin, and we said, I wonder what happened if it came into Chicago. And we're talking about why they wouldn't come into Chicago. Well, guess what? Trillium's coming into Chicago. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. And then two was an article from Punch about IPA and how the byline or the subtitle of the article is, how did a style that was once the face of craft beer become so cringe?
That was a great line reading.
Well, ... cringe question mark.
It's your improv background coming in.
Oh,
your playwriting background.
Yes. So where do you want to start?
I think that we should start with Trillium.
Yeah, I
and then I
agree.
think that might segue into why IPAs become so cringe. No, spoiler alert.
Oh, okay. How do you really feel? Okay, well, guess what? Trillium is coming into Chicago in about 2 weeks from now. It's December 5th, so by the time you're hearing it, it'll have just launched. And that's a joke. And yeah, so they're coming in with their own distributor. Their distributor's going to have several other brands as well. Some of them are already being distributed here, but it's a solid book, so it isn't just a one-trick pony necessarily. But definitely the big man on campus in their book will be Trillium. So they had on the 26th of November, we got an email saying that they wanted our pre-orders by the 30th, and that they would be dropping. I don't see it here, but I'm pretty sure I seem to remember something like the December 19th or something that they were going to be coming in. So I could be wrong about that, but whatever. Oh yeah, 12/19. That's what it says, availability. So we're going to be getting, you want to hear what we're going to be getting?
Absolutely.
Oh, I know. I can tell you really want to hear. So we're going to be getting the Galaxy Dry Hopped Fort Point Pale Ale. 6.6% pale, as well as the double dry hopped Fort Point Ale, as well as the there's they're in multiple formats. Stilling Street IPA, which is an IPA. Liquid Metal, which is a double IPA, and Harbor Islands, which is also a double IPA. So a pale ale, an IPA, and 2 double IPAs is what they're going to be doing.
So 3 different styles.
3 different styles. Cans of the Liquid Metal, the Galaxy Dry Hop, Fort Point, and the Stilling Street. So cans of their pale IPA and double IPA.
Mm-hmm.
And then kegs of all 5. Only available in the little kegs, the 20-liter Dolium kegs. So it's a little less than a sixtel, right?
A little more.
It's a little more than a sixtel. Okay.
It's 5.16 versus 5.2 gallons.
Oh, so it's almost exactly the same. Yeah. So there you go. So we were talking about like how's this stuff going to do? It's like, and we were thinking, there's going to be a big push for it. We're going to get ready to bring in a whole bunch. Put it on. I think people would be excited about it.
It's priced right; it'll fly.
Right. Well, there you go. I may have already shared some of this information with you as soon as I saw it because I was like, "What the what?"
So cheap.
It's this stuff ain't cheap. So essentially, they're double IPAs. Well, let me start out with the cheapest stuff that they have. Their Fort Point Pale Ale. I maybe should bring up like Excel or something like that so I can do some quick equations on here. But
right. Math pod,
yeah. So it's should I be giving like? I probably shouldn't be giving like wholesale prices.
I don't think you're allowed to. Like,
yeah. So I won't give wholesale prices.
You can give like MSRP, and people can or what you would have to charge on the shelf, and then people might be able to back into it. But yeah, I don't think you should be saying it.
Right.
Frowned upon.
I'll just do it. Yeah, it definitely is. So I'll give it. I'll do like a very rough. Like MSRP, so don't quote me on this exactly, but the Fort Point Pale, which is the cheapest one, just the pale, not the double dry hopped one. That one's not getting in cans, so just the Galaxy dry hop, single dry hop, I guess that means, as well as the Stilling Street IPA, are going to come in at our normal margin in the range of like $29 to $30 a 4-pack. So it starts there and then it goes up. What's the other one? The Liquid Metal, I think it is what it is. Let's look. Is that what? Yeah, the Liquid Metal. Oh, the good thing about I can just drag these down. Boom. Oh my gosh. $36 to $37 a 4-pack.
Jesus. That's so much. That's more
for,
than that's so
for the
much.
cans. And then what do we have? So then for the kegs,
how much would you have to charge for let's do how much you would charge for an 8-ounce pour in your normal margin?
A normal margin.
What do you think? You would have to do these in 8 ounces, right? Is that the smallest pour you guys do?
I mean, I guess, but like it's
low ABV,
but
it's not high ABV. I mean,
right. But normally we offer a couple different prices, right? So
sure. And then we also give me how much a growler would be with the glass.
Exactly. So let me see. So that's that.
Where are they coming up with this pricing? Because it's definitely not just like, it costs us this much to make. So
yeah, well, I do like some very quick and again rough math, so don't hold me to it. So, so you want me to do like an 8-ounce pour, or you just want to go all in for we could do
you're not doing a pint, so either 8 or 12, probably, right?
I mean, a pint of a 6.6% pale ale. I mean, that's pretty typical. If you order a,
Right.
I mean, how strong is Two Hearted? 7.5, 7?
Yeah.
You get
Sure.
pints of that.
Well, yeah, but we're just going straight on ABV, I guess. But there's some unobtainium and first-timedness to this, so.
Okay, but we can do any of them. So for the kegs of the cheapest ones would be the Galaxy Dry Hop and the Stilling Street. So those are line price for those two. You wanted an 8-ounce pour of those of the cheapo, like you're on a budget. You're not really you can't really flex on anyone.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, for you. Those would be for an 8-ounce pour. Looks like probably $10 to $11
I mean,
for an
it's not-
8-ounce pour.
Not the most expensive beer you've ever had on draft, but
Probably
it's
the
close.
most expensive pale ale.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely it's not close because we've had like crazy barrel aged stouts, maybe some lambics, stuff like that. That's been quite a bit
Lesser
more.
beers.
Right. But then you start getting into what's the next one? The double dry hop pale ale. A double dry hop pale ale.
It's 2 times the dry hop.
Yes.
So
For
it's
8-ounce pour,
twice the
you're
price.
looking more like $12, maybe $13.
Sounds like a deal to me, Chris.
for an 8-ounce pour.
Twice the hops, only a few dollars more.
If you wanted to get pints of either of those, you're talking about a 7 and a 6.5% beer. The one would be $21 for a pint, and the other one would be $25 for a pint. So it is worth giving these. That's how you drink these beers.
Will you please have that as an option when you guys tap them if you bring them in?
If we bring
For
them
me.
in, I will. I promise you, I will do that.
Have a $25 16-ounce pour.
Yes, it'd be amazing. Surprise! And then that's not even the highest end one.
How much for a boot?
So the Liquid Metal Double IPA and the
that's not the
Harbor
highest one.
Islands. No, those for an 8-ounce are going to be more like $13 to $14 for an 8-ounce pour,
Yeah.
or $27 for a pint, or if you just want to get a 12-ounce like a tulip,
Yeah.
$20. $20 tulip. What's the big deal? Just go for it.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So
knew
we're letting
it was expensive.
we're letting
but I didn't.
slip.
I've done
Yeah.
that math. What do you think's gonna happen?
Well, I think $30 and $37 for a 4-pack is too much.
But do you think people will?
That's more than Death Star, for example.
Sure. Do you think people will do it once just because, like, oh, I've never been able to get Trillium before?
Well, what do you think? That's why I wanted to bring it up. What do you think we
I-
should do here at the Beer Temple?
Oh, geez. I think you should bring in. I would bring in like a
Well, the
case
pre-order
of each.
date's already over, so
Yeah.
we've already done something.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm so not tuned into that side of it anymore. Like, I mean, my beer's probably almost as expensive when you do it by per ounce, but I make 35 cases of things at a
Right.
time. So, but no, I don't. I just don't see myself ever purchasing a 4-pack. Would you sell them as 4-packs? Are you allowed to break them into cans?
Yeah, we can break them into cans if
I
we
think
want.
that wouldn't that make way more sense than trying to sell a $37 4-pack?
Probably. What I thought about maybe doing was maybe getting like 2 of the Fort points and then 1 of the other 2, and then
doing
doing
a little mixer?
doing a mixed 4-pack, so you can get all of them, and then also I only then have to move 6, 12, 8, 24 units.
Right, instead of every single can
Yeah.
has its own sale.
Then I
Is
have
it-
to,
I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
maybe do that. I
Because
don't
like
know.
people are at that price point, you're certainly buying an experience. You're not buying the actual organoleptic like quality of the.
Now, what about
thing inside of
draft?
it.
Do you think so? I don't think draft of those will have those beers. Don't seem to have the same pull on draft as they do in package. People want the package of those things.
Yeah,
to seem.
sure. I mean, there's also a lot of good, cheaper versions of that in Chicago, like that you probably have on right now. So, I
Right.
mean, as someone who does not really care that much about this style of beer, I would never pay that $14 for an 8-ounce pour or something like that. Not in a million years.
But what I'm thinking I can do is I'll tell you what we did, and then we'll see how it goes, and I'll let you guys all know how it. Yeah, but let's put some predictions out there. How do you think it'll go? Oh, okay. I think someone trying to get like a game. We have a little like
little game cart,
a little game caddy. It's actually an old librarian. Those things that they're like tilted so the books kind of sit in them.
Yeah.
So it's not really good for games, but I saw it on I think Craigslist for really cheap. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's not really that good for what it needs to be doing.
It's aesthetically pleasing.
Not even that aesthetically pleasing.
Do you think this is a strategy for them that they're going to do this with any level of consistency, or do you think they're like, we can get away with this the first time we drop beer in Chicago, and then if they come back, it'll be more reasonable? Or do you think it's just like,
I don't know.
it's like, here it is, take it or leave it?
I don't
Chicago.
think it's going to be like, hey, we're looking to get steady handles, and we're going to try to have this set we're going to try to have it at Target at all times. I don't think it's going to be like that.
Right.
Apparently, it sold like gangbusters in Wisconsin. I don't know if that's true. I haven't verified it, but somebody told me that. Someone in the industry, so that means it's 40% likely to be true. So that it was like, if
it wasn't Tater, I don't believe it.
Yeah, right.
I only trust Tater.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it'll, I guess, be back. I have no idea. I'm guessing they'll try to do like a other half thing where it drops every so often.
Yeah, but those
maybe
weren't
once or twice a year.
$37. How much were those for a 4-pack?
They're a lot. They're not that much, though.
They're like 28,
right.
26.
Yes.
That's $10 difference for a 4-pack, which is another 4-pack. It's another 4-pack of normal price beer.
Well, yeah, it's going to be between like 29 to 37 is the range that Trillium's looking to play in.
I mean, I think, honestly, it makes sense for stores we've talked about in the suburbs where they plan to sell them by single cans. It makes more sense for that type of experience than trying to sell them as 4-packs, I think.
Right.
Because these are things to be ticked. These aren't things to be bought regularly or even really, like, enjoyed in the same way that you or I often enjoy. Like, you're holding up a Weizen Doppelbock up to the light to see the red hues of it. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, I've heard those shops mark up the individual cans a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're looking at like an $8 or $10 can of a pale ale. So you're paying like a bar price, essentially.
Right. And when you
the bar price of a normal beer,
right,
of a normal double dry hop IPA.
And that's like, when you think about it that way, to me, like, the value proposition of a $37 4-pack of beer that personally I don't really want anyway is crazy. But if you're like $8 to have this beer that's like world renowned for being what it is,
juicy,
yeah,
it's thick.
And maybe to try it, I'll give you $8. I'm not gonna give you 40, but
Right.
and then have 3 that I'm trying to convince my other friends that we actually like drinking 16 ounces of this.
Well, how about this though? Would you do 16? Would you do $26 to try all 3? You get 3 cans for $26. Because that's how much it would cost to get one of each.
I would probably do that before I'd buy a 4-pack for
Of any one of them.
$36. Yeah.
What about a
Yeah,
4-pack for
absolutely,
30
absolutely.
though?
No, I would get 3 cans for the same
26.
price of different things before I got 4-pack.
You get a 3-pack of
So you got to think,
rather than a 4-pack.
Why do you buy a 4-pack? It's to drink 4
drink.
beers.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to drink 4 of those. I just want to try the 3, and maybe if I liked one of them, I'll buy a 4-pack. But like, I actually want to. I just want to try them.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but again, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to buy any of them, Chris.
Right.
Don't do what I want.
No. I mean, the decision's already been made. I'm just, again, I'm trying to pick your
Right.
brain here.
Where do they exist in the spectrum of like hyped hazy breweries?
I think they are.
They're like second tier, right?
I think they are. They used to be top tier. I think
Yeah.
they're now second tier.
They're like 6 man, right? They're like the first person
They're
off
like
the
Detlef
bench.
Shrimp. Maybe a great 6
Detlef-
man.
Yeah, it's the killer shot.
Yeah.
Great name.
Great haircut.
Detlef. Yeah, but so who's the top tier is
Treehouse.
Treehouse.
is the goat right now.
Hill Farmstead still
For the
out there?
hose, for the hazy,
For the hose.
for the hose. Yeah.
Hill Farmstead's still out there.
HOSE.
Yeah, hose. You don't have to bleep that out. Don't write that down. And then is there anyone else up there? Where's
I think other
Heading
half
Topper
is
these days?
probably
You think they're-
above them, maybe. I also think that maybe, I don't know. The one out in Monkish, I think, might be above them
Okay.
now. I don't
Okay.
think they used to be.
Uh-uh.
I don't know. There might be some others
Where does
that I don't know.
The Alchemist fit into all this at this point?
I think the Alchemist is above them.
Are they top tier? Are they up there with Hill Farm?
Yeah, I think
still?
they're top tier still.
Because of how good their beer is, or because of just the history,
The
and
vestigial
the
hype.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the vestigial. Like who's to say anymore, really? I think those three are probably like the top tier, right? And then after that, you have
What was the third one again that you put
Hill,
up there?
Hill Farmstead,
Treehouse
Alchemist
and Alchemist.
and Treehouse. Yeah,
I'd say those are the top three. Yeah.
because those are also the ones that I've had experience with. Alchemist not as often, but I've gotten that beer much more beat up most of the time I've gotten it. Where I've been like, oh, this is different, and this is exceptional.
Yeah.
Whereas every time I've had something from most of those other breweries, it's been like, this is over the top, or this is
Yeah.
too sweet for me, or it's something that I'm just like, and the actual liquid itself, it did not.
Fresh
me
Vocal
the same
Banger,
way.
I'll pretty much put up against any hazy. And
Yeah.
for me, for my preference, I'm not saying like, which I think I have to remind people sometimes when I say those definitive things that it's obviously my preference. Like
Right.
I like that as much as any of the other ones I've liked. I've been saying that for a very long time, and the good thing is I think we're past the era of, well, you just have to try this one.
Right. I think it's all evened out.
So here's what we did. I think we brought in one case of each. Maybe, I forget. They limited it too, so we couldn't even bring in a whole bunch, I don't think. But I think we brought in 2 of that pale ale, maybe, and then one of the double IPA, or maybe 2 each of IPA and pale, and 1 of the double IPA, and then we brought in no draft. Yeah, we didn't bring in any.
I mean, the economics of that just don't really make sense, right?
No.
Like you know you're going to sell all those cans within a couple of days. You're not
Right.
sure that you're actually going to sell all that draft.
No.
Right? At the prices that you really need to charge for it
And we
to
would have brought
make
in
sense.
just like the regular old, well, the Galaxy Dry Hopped Fort Point was the one I would have done, the cheaper one. Also the lower alcohol one. I guess the smart thing would have maybe been to do the Stilling Street IPA, because it's the same cost, and it's 0.5% higher in alcohol.
How
So
many dry hops, though?
both of them are single. I mean, the Stilling Street doesn't even say dry hopped in the name, so it's not even really an IPA or a pale as far as I'm
Just
concerned.
dump it right down you bring it in just to dump it down the drain so no one has to drink that swill.
Exactly. Somebody's trying to get in touch with me badly. Maybe I'll take a break. I'll look at it. So none. I was about to not bring in, I consider not bringing in any, and if I did, I was going to put out a poll online. It might have been a little bridge burny, but just been like...
A bridge that's going to appear and disappear at their will.
Right.
Oh no! Why not set it on fire?
Exactly.
Let's go.
Right. Like, yeah. So it was, we were going to put it out there and be like, so this is what it's coming in. This is how much it would cost. And, what would your feelings be about this beer for that much? And then have like options, varying degrees of snarkiness, but essentially would be like,
Don't get too snarky,
yeah,
Doug
I
will
mean,
get mad at you.
yeah, it's top tier stuff can command top tier prices, or I try it once, but that's probably about it, or nope, not interested. That's too expensive. There's other stuff that's cheaper. Would be the sentiment, how we would position the phrasing. Who knows?
I'm genuinely interested in what other people who are either more tuned into this or more excited to try the actual beers thinks, rather than just me and my jaded take on that style.
Well,
if you're out there, tell us what you think.
Well, Max Peltier, GM for one of the famed beer draft teams that we bring in here every once in a while. He does have
Who
a
won the
very
last one,
good
by the way?
draft. I forget.
I think I did.
I'm not sure about
Pretty
that.
sure I
I'm
won.
pretty sure I forget. So, he kind of, it was a moot point to him because he was like, at these quantities, we'll bring it in. They're going to move. He did not really think it was an issue. So, and he's like, don't even make a big deal out of it. We'll just bring them in. They'll go. And we have enough people who will be interested in it. We're going to sell them as 4-packs and they'll go.
Right.
So I was like, okay, fine. I think that at those prices, it's going to drop. My guess, and I'm not really in the know either. I mean, this is really something I would want to talk to Max about. I'm pretty sure he feels somewhat similar to I do. It's going to fall off a cliff in the city. I don't know what the burbs are going to be like.
Sure.
I mean, we should see.
But
maybe,
if they're only giving you one case, it's the smallest cliff to fall off of. Like, what's the brand harm if someone only sells 5 of the 6 in the first week? There's just one 4-pack of $28 beer sitting on the shelf somewhere for another week. Like, they're going to be. I think that there's very low risk for you or them in that.
Well, I think the way it works is you can order more the next time and it moves slower.
Right.
So I think some people will bring in a lot and it'll just sit there. And that is the death of some of those, of the hype, you know?
Sure.
So, yeah, it's expensive beer.
It's also really hard, like, and this isn't to say this is definitely what they're doing, but to try to predict demand and only feed it. It's like try to be supreme and feed just under demand so it stays in demand, but trying to do that in multiple markets and keeping like your finger on the pulse of all those is incredibly difficult, and it turns really fast. Like, right, it doesn't just go from like, oh, super hyped up to like still pretty hyped up. It goes super hyped up to being like, yeah, I had that one already, like really, really fast. So I don't know. I'm sure the first one will fly. I'm sure people will talk about it.
And it has to be in people's minds, and people can, maybe it will be, people can also kid themselves. At least it has to taste a lot better, or at least it has to taste pretty unique compared to some of these other beers that you can get for $10 less easily. Easily $10 less a 4-pack.
I think there's a lot, and I think this is going away rapidly, but there's some beers that people are just like, well, because I haven't had it, it must be so much better than the ones I have had. But Chicago is such an advanced beer market, both in what comes here to be sold and what's being produced here, that you've had an elite level version. You can have an elite level version of basically any style of beer that's relatively reasonably, like, from a brewery in Chicago or that is distributed in Chicago. And it's, you know, there's diminishing returns on this, right? Like,
Right.
Especially once it's getting shipped here. Like, if you're going to like the source and drinking it, there certainly can be different experiences because of freshness and the way the beer gets handled. But you know, I bet Le Jus is probably at least 90% as good as any of these beers, if not as good as.
I guess we can find out.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'll do. Maybe
Or any
I'll
Hop
bring
Butcher
one of them
beer is
on.
Probably
The one that I can afford. When it comes in, we'll open one up.
We'll pool all of our Patreon money and we'll buy one can of double dry hop Galaxy, whatever.
I mean, I do think someone brought up an interesting way to think about it, which is if you take into account how much it costs some of these people who do drink these beers in Chicago, like these Trilliums, Treehouses, stuff like that. You know, I mean, it's still cheaper than having it shipped.
So that was part of like when I how do they get to these numbers? Like, it's not just, oh, our cost of good is this, and then, you know, that's 30%, so we gotta blah blah blah, and then here's the actual number. It's them being like, well, think about someone buying it at our tap room for $17.99 and then shipping it to Chicago for, you know, $17. So let's at like 34. All right, yeah, like, and then factor in freight, and so these people like put it like I wouldn't be surprised if secondary / the actual like money people are spending to get beers traded and shipped to them factored into how much they price this.
Right.
Because there's no way that that this is just straight up a economic calculation?
I mean, it probably is straight up economics. In fact, in that this is how much money I want to make.
Oh, from that end, sure, but it's not like this is how much it costs me to make this product,
No.
and this is its utility and all that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think they want to make a lot of money.
Right.
Which,
Good on them.
good luck. Good luck. I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
And-
And I really want to see how it goes in the city. And I'll just use us as an indicator of that. That'll be easy. But also like the beers on the wall of like that's kind of the leader of that style of suburban shop, right? Is kind of that place.
We should have,
you would know.
Yeah, they're them. I would say that like singles driven
Yeah.
sales. Yeah, they're
They kind of
definitely the
started
leader.
that.
We should have Vavrick on the show. He's like
that's
their
true.
one of their, I don't even know what his role, corporate something.
Corporate
something.
overlord, I think.
Yeah, something very esteemed. But we should have him on the show to talk about it.
It's true. We should. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have him on. We'll have Holly on too.
And genuinely, I do want to hear, like, if you're out there and you're planning on buying these at these prices, write us.
Yes.
And send us a letter.
Or if you're
an
hearing about it
electronic
now,
letter.
what do you think?
Yeah, send us a letter to insiders at Beer Temple.
No. Insiders at Craft Beer.
At Craft Beer Temple.
.com.
Or the address of this place, which is
In the show notes.
yeah, in the show notes. And tell us like what motivating factors went into spending this much money on these beers.
Yeah. And hey, if you want to just try it, and that's not, and that's worth it for you to try because you've been hearing about this beer, you've only had it a couple times, you've never had it. Try to be honest, even if you hate the fact that you're going to do it. But
Right.
you're still going to do it. Just let us know.
Right. Don't be ashamed. I spent much more money per ounce on beers in the past.
I spent much more money per ounce for a single ounce of whiskey, and I just said I did.
yeah.
So
Well,
don't worry
whiskey's
about it.
different.
Could have bought a 4-pack of Trillium with this.
That should tell Mike Miller next time.
Yeah, right. Cool. All right. Well, then there we go. Trillium in Chicago. We'll see how it goes, and I will when we have it all. I'll bring it in. We'll taste it. I do remember. I think the last time I had Trillium, oh boy, that I can remember anyway. No, that's not true because I went to Trillium's tap room. I forgot about that. Was visiting Boston Joe in Canton, Massachusetts.
My parents have been to their tap room.
But I think the last time I had a can of their beer, certainly I can remember, was in Belgium. We went out there and we had been out really late and we were drinking a lot. Somebody might have fallen down a flight of steps and landed on their face later in that
Jesus.
night. Had a tooth get knocked out.
Oh no.
But we opened up a Trillium, and after having all that Belgian beer, it tasted so good. And we were definitely like poo-pooing Trillium.
Yeah.
And we opened it up at the end of the night, and we're like, whoa, this tastes really good. We realized how American we were, I think, is what it came down to. Why don't we take a little break, refresh our beers, and then come back and talk about cringy old IPA a little more.
Welcome back to the
you.
Beer Temple Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau from Is Was Brewing. I'm here with Fade Master Serge and your other co-host, Chris Quinn of the Beer Temple. Chris, how you doing? Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm doing well. We're getting ready to. I'm pulling
Fresh
up
off the
this-
heels of Trillium,
Yeah.
what are we going to talk about now?
Well, one thing that Fade Master Serge mentioned during the break before we move on is he wondered how fresh the beer was going to be, the Trillium, when it came in. So I think it must be said, although it shouldn't need to be said, is all of what I said is dependent on it being extremely fresh.
Right.
In fact, I think if it's like 5 days old somehow, 6 days old, that would actually really, really help it. If it was
For
3
sure.
weeks old, fine. If it's over a month old, people are going to be like, what is this? And if it's like if it's like a month and a half old, good luck.
Just throw it in the trash.
Just throw it in the trash.
If
It's not even beer anymore.
Will you agree on air right now to go
What?
old school beer temple? And if that stuff comes in with more than 6 weeks of age on it, you will throw it right in the dumpster before you sell it to people.
Yes.
All right.
What did I disagree to?
That if it comes in and it's more than 6 weeks old, that instead of selling it to people, you will not even ask for a refund.
All of it.
You'll take a video of you throwing it in the dumpster like you used to.
That'll be really expensive.
You agreed to it already. Tell Max.
Okay. I mean, these are the case prices.
I hope we
that
just
I'll be-
talked
I know.
about it.
Yikes. Well, we'll see. Hopefully it won't be.
I'll-
How old? How old's the
You
next
said
month
6
and a
weeks.
half? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Talking about burning a bridge. Anyway. So here is an article that was sent by a regular to somebody here at the Beer Temple, who then sent it to me, and then I read it and I sent it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely got a bunch of us reading and talking. It's from Punch, and it was written by Courtney Eisman. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I actually reached out to the author and asked if she wanted to come on the show sometime. She said she'd be down. So maybe we'll have her on the show someday. We'll see. But anyway, it's called Everyone Loves to Hate the IPA. It's from late October. And it said, how did a style that was once the face of craft beer become so cringe?
It's also still the face of craft beer.
Yeah, I would 1,000% agree with that. I would agree with that on every level.
Yeah.
The most macro crafty and the most like niche little.
Yeah.
It's IPA
face.
still dominates it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in Ray Daniels
And still
hell.
affects it. I mean, like, I'm sure is somehow it's still on a plane of IPA. It's like somehow defined by the fact that you don't do IPAs to some degree to certain people, I would imagine.
Yeah. Even though that's something that I never said we'll never do an IPA. Actually, I like them very much and plan on doing them at some point. But
Sure.
I'm sure plenty of people that don't listen to this show or to me directly think we'll never make one.
Yeah.
And we define us by not making them.
Yeah. So should I just read the thing? It's kind of a long article, but we can just read and then stop, kind of like we did with the Sierra Nevada article. Okay. On a Saturday afternoon in Brooklyn, I sat at the bar at my favorite brewery, relishing the opportunity to unpack the eclectic tap list. An English-style mild ale. Hey, what do you
Hey.
know? A grisette, an Italian-style Pilsner with the bartender. So we already know what type of bar she's at. While I weighed my options, a group of 20-something guys tumbled in and stepped up to the bar. What's the haziest, juiciest IPA you got? One asked before even glancing at the menu. If you spent any time drinking over the past decade, you've probably met this guy. He's IPA guy, and while the type has gone from fist-pumping bro who proves his masculinity by chugging the bitterest West Coast IPA to one who flexes his hyper beast prowess with Instagram shots of limited release New England IPA, you still know him when you see him. At any bar or brewery, quote, at any bar or brewery, you will hear someone say, IPA guy, not ironically, says Robin G. Weiss, an assistant brewer at Wild East Brewing Co. in Brooklyn. Should we stop there or should I keep going? There's a lot, even in that first paragraph or two paragraphs. There's a lot.
This is already pretty New York specific, I think.
I'd have to assume, because it certainly isn't my experience. And believe me, I have the type of bar. I mean, we have a mild on right now.
Yeah.
We have.
Well, she was at a brewery.
NESB.
She said she was at a brewery.
She did, of course, because
Why would they
who
come to a
goes
beer bar?
Why would anyone go to a beer bar for an eclectic beer list? A grisette and an Italian-style Pilsner. Man, it seems pretty Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm curious of what place she's at. There.
Yeah, I don't know. I could think of a few in New York that might be.
It seems a little New York.
Yeah,
to me.
but also like the idea of like the same person that wants the haziest, juiciest thing to take an Instagram picture with, and the guy that was drinking the most bitter West Coast IPAs, like those aren't the same person to me. Like the person that was drinking the most bitter West Coast IPAs has aged out of this.
Well, I mean,
personality
I think
type.
that's where we're going. She
Okay.
She gets there with
Okay.
that. Yeah. Okay. IPA is craft beer's biggest sales driver. Even as craft beer sales decelerate, data shows the IPA holds on to 41% sales share among craft breweries. It still excites many craft connoisseurs while simultaneously appealing to casual drinkers who don't care about craft. But IPA is also cringe. What happened? How did it go from a style that is an opportunity for creativity and a valuable entry point for craft beer newcomers to a punchline? IPA's very recent origin story is rooted in oppression and colonialism. Brewers were boosting the strength and hopping rates of all ale styles, not just pale ales, for preservation purposes on long ships, India, warmer climates in the 1760s. British Asian journalist David Jesudason unpacked IPA's identity for good beer hunting, referring to William someone's book, I can't pronounce it, Dalrymple. Oof, I can't. Dalrymple's book, The Anarchy, the East India Company, Corporate Violence, and the Pillage of an Empire. Okay, that's the East India Company. That was a pretty brutal company. Okay, to discuss how England's East India Company plundered Bengal and beyond. The EIC ships would have physically brought English Pale Ale to India, but the name India Pale Ale builds a false connection between this beer and India culturally. They were drunk by high-ranking British soldiers, not by the people of India. Jesudason says locals wouldn't be allowed to drink or even allowed in bars that served them. Yet, as IPAs evolved in England, they were marketed as a romantic image for sipping in beers in the tropical climate. That forgets all the blood, sweat, theft, and genocide committed, he explained. The whitewashing lives on. One of England's best-known IPAs is Thornbridge Brewery's Jaipur beer, which was first brewed in 2005. Names, taglines, and turbans on labels still foster faux nostalgia. IPA's true history remains buried in England and all but unknown in the United States, from 19th century influx of German immigrants to post-Prohibition consolidation of American beer, to just a few behemoth brands. I'm just going to skip through this. Talks about some early IPAs. 1971, Fritz Maytag made Liberty Ale. And as early craft breweries proliferated, American-made English IPAs did too. And the style soon began to evolve thanks to the embrace of American hops. Do you want to talk about any of that, or just keep going on from that?
I mean, it's a much deeper
that's
plunge into the origins of IPA than I think we've ever talked about.
Yes. Sure. I will say this. I don't think IPA's origin is rooted in oppression and colonialization any more than mild is.
Sure.
I'll say that.
Well, I mean, I think her argument of that, the fact that it was sent to a colony and mild wasn't.
I bet you mild was.
Well,
I mean, in the way that mild was used back then in the Ron Pattinsonian definition of what mild meant. So maybe it wasn't because they didn't have low alcohol. Porter certainly was.
Sure.
Because there was more porter going over there than there was IPA.
Yeah.
So how about not mild? I use mild because that was being drunk at the bar earlier, but porter.
Yeah. Sure.
So porter, I think, is just as steeped in oppression and colonialism if we're going by these routes. Probably much more so because it was a much bigger beer style and much more
Sure.
industrial.
I think there's a fair point to say that by using the name and marketing as
That's
such,
separate,
that it's a little bit more leaning on that culture to sell it, but I don't think that has. It's good to acknowledge, but I don't think it has anything that much to do with IPA as we think about it now.
Yeah, I think that's. I agree. I think that's a little bit separate.
It seems
the
like
origin
it seems
story.
like a necessary thing to do in this type of article.
Yeah.
From that perspective.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I guess so. So then, as founding brewer at Oregon Steelhead Brewing Company, Terry Farendorf squared the IPA firmly within American craft. I wanted to make all my beers with American, not imported ingredients, he says. Launching in '91, her Bombay Bomber (parentheses note the bogus Indian marketing connection borrowed from the UK) was a hit and inspired similar efforts with U.S.-grown ingredients. In craft beer's infancy, it wasn't clear which beer would galvanize the industry until the IPA. Taking a traditional European style and reinventing it with punchier American hops appealed to U.S. tastes and created a sense of pride. 100% agree there. I mean, that's just the story of U.S. craft beer. Could not agree more. Quote, it all goes with America's proclivity for bold flavor, says Jeff Allworth, author of the Beer Bible. Starbucks became popular with this over-roasted flavor profile, super intense. California wines in the 70s and 80s were big, jammy, over the top. It's not surprising we're attracted to this big flavor from hops. That excitement, the very American desire for knockout flavors and another American habit, one-upsmanship, took the IPA from a showcase for American hops to a stage for a bitter arms race. When California Stone Brewing unveiled Ruination, a West Coast double IPA in 2002, the company threw down the gauntlet. Who could make and drink the most outlandishly bitter IPA? The IBU wars were a turning point in IPA culture, presenting the first round of jokes and eye rolls aimed at the IPA consumer. Craft is so much about innovation and what's next. The IBU arms race was probably inevitable, says barrel-aged out and selling out author Josh Noel.
Oh, friend of the show.
Yeah. Allworth has been on as well.
That's true.
IPA is great, he continues. So what about double IPA, triple IPA, even more IBUs, end quote. Not only did the IBU war send American craft beer driving forward forever towards bigger and bolder, they introduced an element of toxic dudeness to IPA connoisseurship. Led by Stone Brewing, IPA marketing became increasingly aggressive and arrogant. Quote, it is quite doubtful that you have the taste or sophistication to be able to appreciate an ale of this quality and depth, end quote, reads the marketing copy from Stone's Arrogant Bastard Ale,
But Arrogant
which was
Bastard
released in
is-
1997.
Arrogant Bastard's like a red ale, though.
Yeah, I'll finish this sentence. In '08, Green Flash unleashed an IPA with a dare for a name, Palate Wrecker. In 2010, McKellar challenged drinkers' thresholds with an IPU supposedly reaching 1,000 IBUs. Parentheses, it did not. This kind of marketing
Theoretically.
squarely targeted young white men. So I'll read another. It's all part of the same part of the story. The next paragraph starts, quote, that was the whole game, says Allworth. It goes with the grunge thing, a really loud, punky decade of toxic white masculinity. All that stuff was pitched at a particular kind of person, and a lot of those people went on to found a lot of breweries in the U.S. in the early to mid-aughts.
I think that's all fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole thing about the beer wars and eye rolls and I guess the IBU wars were a little eye rolly. I do think though that, to be fair, I think that was a portion of IPA. Do you really think the IBU wars defined IPA. Even
It was
then,
it was the loudest thing happening. I don't think it defined everything that was happening, but it was
like
like
who could make the hoppiest thing?
yeah. I think that was what drove marketing and narrative and attention was like like that was like the whole Randall enamel animal thing.
Sure.
Like it was permeating
Oh, for sure.
throughout.
I mean,
craft beer.
it definitely how you could make it. Yeah, like who could make the hoppiest thing? Who could make? I don't know if I think that it was the. I mean, it was definitely there. It was definitely an element to it. I'm trying to think back. I'm trying to think back right now.
It drove IPA in the same way that like, let's make the thickest, haziest, juiciest IPA, quote unquote, has driven or driving IPA. It drives the like very tip of the spear or the very center of the bullseye of the nerdiest like or most engaged consumer. Where like sure like the hoppiest thing was what was the like I bought a Stone 14 and drank it out of the bomber at a party in college and it was disgusting, but I told myself it was great. But like most of what was being sold then was Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and like Two Hearted and things like that. Like so just saying it drove IPA is the same as us being like trying to make the haziest IPA drove IPA for the last 5 years, where it's not what most people were drinking, but it is what a certain vocal minority of people were talking
Maybe
about
what
and
the
drinking.
base of IPA was. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. I do remember those. IBU wars. Before that, there was definitely an alcohol war. Like who could make the strongest beer? These beers are super strong, and
Right.
there was definitely a part of that too.
It was a young market. The est of anything was like what was happening. Like the most this, the most that.
Yeah.
Like the highest ABV. How do we get like they were testing the parameters of like the most fundamental aspects of the construction
and
of a
definitely
beer.
marketed
Alcohol.
towards men for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Because even like the blonde ales, could you have a blonde ale that wasn't named after like Blonde Bombshell?
Blonde ale,
yeah, stuff like that.
Right.
Reds as well, like
Right.
and there was a lot of like sophomoric humor, a lot of lame humor. I always hated that.
It was terrible.
In
Tramp
beer.
stamp white ale, like it's
Right.
It stunk.
Yeah, but
I'm glad it's over.
there was a lot that wasn't as well. Like,
Sure.
let's be fair. There was Allagash White. There was Ellie's Brown Ale. I'm just trying to think of like different, beers that have kind of stuck around. There's so many
For
that
sure.
did not as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I will say that I don't know. I guess maybe at the time, maybe it was different. Maybe I was blind to it. Maybe I was part of it. I don't think I was ever going after that like bombastic bro-y thing. And I don't think I saw those types of people either. Craft beer people weren't really, they didn't seem very bro-y yet.
Yeah, yet. I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But I certainly was drinking a lot of those things.
Yeah.
But it was never with like this like, it was more just I'm trying to understand them more than it was like I felt like I was cool for drinking them.
No, if anything, you felt geeky for drinking them, I
Right.
think. Like you were into this niche, geeky thing that most people didn't know about that you had to explain / maybe try to apologize for.
Right.
And
Right. It never seemed like I was trying to prove some sort of masculinity. And not that I was like trying to drink the most bitter beers. I never was really into
Right.
that. But like I also didn't know a lot of those people. I'm sure they existed, but
I'm sure they did.
I wasn't drinking with them.
Yeah. Okay. A pendulum swing was inevitable. With The Alchemist's heady topper, co-founder John Kimmich introduced the New England IPA. Hey, I agree with her with this for sure. Still more bitter than today's New England IPAs, but with more body to support a massive hop character, a bit of haze, and what has been considered a fault, which had been considered a fault in IPAs, the haze. Drinkers showed immediate interest in IPAs that showcased hop aroma rather than hop bitterness. Brewers subsequently went racing back down the IPA scale towards 0. Quote, hazies have a lower bar of entry to casual drinkers, both due to the softer, creamier mouthfeel and the less bitter profile that mirrors citrus, says Alex Kidd, founder of Don't Drink Beer, also been on the show. That profile took some pandering twists that gave ways to substyles like the milkshake IPA. Would definitely agree that. I mean, we've talked about how they're just more approachable styles. The ensuing haze craze turned the IPA from a style encouraging men to peacock their bitterness tolerance to a beer for all comers. But it also queued up a new kind of cringeworthy behavior. Enter the haze boy or haze bro, the IPA guy molded by craft beer's new hype beast drops and ensuing line culture. Beers like Heady Topper were sold in limited amounts in so few places that fans began combing internet posts to arrange trades or traveling to breweries to queue for hours. An entirely new, albeit tiny, subculture of craft beer fans formed by the end of the aughts, later bolstered by the opening of cult haze makers like Treehouse in Massachusetts, other half in Brooklyn. The latter gets the credit / blame for seducing finance bros, the flashy types that early IPA fans always thought their scene was safe from.
This is where I think that this goes from being, this is where it jumps into being a bro-y thing.
Right.
For me, at least in my observational stuff, is like, and going to New York, I went to New York often around this time, and it was a very different person that was drinking hazy beers.
Tell me about it.
It was like finance bros or people that like did not care. In Chicago, when someone was at a beer bar like this or at a brewery, they were probably going to drink a plethora of styles, try a lot of stuff, come back. Like when Half Acre was making like a Stylist Wonder Brown Ale, kind of over ale, and Gossamer still. And then in New York, it would be people that were just only interested in drinking the juiciest, haziest thing, and that's a city of extremes. So for me, this article is very much more about what's happening in New York than what's happening at large in the beer industry. But
got it.
But yes, and then going to other half and seeing like, oh, there are literally like I'd always heard jokes about there's bars. There's a tap room that has one Pilsner on and then 26 IPAs, and I'd never actually seen it until I went to other half, and then it was literally there was like there was a Pilsner. There was, I think there might have been a Saison, and then there was a couple of Prairie beers because they were doing some
Guests,
sort of, they'd done, yeah, and then it was literally everything else was an IPA or a double IPA or something like that. And like, it's like, oh, this wasn't a joke. This is a real thing. So I think this, and I still don't see that happening as much in Chicago.
No.
Like even Hot Butchers opened their tap room, and they specifically opened with an ESB, a Saison, 3 lagers,
Italian pills,
and plenty of hazy IPAs. But you're like, if there's going to be someone who's going to have basically all hazy IPAs, it should be them,
right?
And they don't do that.
Right.
I was just at Alarmist, who's won a gold medal for their hazy IPA, and they had maybe a third of the list was hazy IPAs. Then there was also clear IPAs, great lagers. Like, maybe it's just a Chicago thing that they're,
or maybe it's a timing thing because she's still in the past here.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know. We're getting there.
All right.
Suddenly, guys were paying people to wait in line to get the latest buzzy IPA, which should then be flaunted on Instagram as a status symbol. The message was simple. You had something exclusive. You had money to pay a line sitter or buy upcharged beer, and you had superior taste in beer. The same toxicity characteristic of the first-generation IPA guy remained in overtone. It had just switched from agro-bitterness mongering to hype beast boasting. It didn't hurt that the hazy IPA was itself Instagrammable. Quote, it photographs very well because it's semi-opaque in the glass, says Dave Infante, author of the drinking culture newsletter Fingers. Instagram was getting really popular midway through the last decade, and brewers were starting to understand its power as a marketing tool. It became a good way to create content around these beers, essentially a visual prop in a glass, end quote. The Instagram-fueled demand for these beers compelled brewers to churn out more and more hazies to keep up, creating a cycle that pushed craft beer further toward a monoculture. Hey, we've talked about that too. There's no central clearinghouse for craft beer culture other than online. That was a quote, sorry. Infante says, quote, that's part of the reason trends in beer can be so amplified by online discourse. That's where a lot of culture-making decision takes place. That circles offline where products are actually made and consumed, then circles back online to people's reactions to it. Another social media app was also defining Haze Boy thirst. Born in 2010, beer rating app Untappd helped introduce an aspect of gamification to beer culture. How many different beers have you tried? How many hops did they have? How many times were they dry hopped? The most checked-in styles on Untappd are American IPA, New England IPA, and Double IPA.
They didn't start that, though.
Milkshake and hazy IPA ratings reach 4.5 of 5, while Kolsch, a style of German lager, peaks at 4. The clear favoring of IPAs pressed breweries to give the raters what they wanted, more IPAs.
I think that culture existed before Untappd.
I think a lot of this is like, it's like true, but it's not the full story, I guess. I think it's not like causal necessarily or entirely. Like I do think that Untappd has I
think Instagram's
done that. Instagram
is certainly
made haze beer. I mean, it totally did.
Yeah, I think that one is actually causal.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Untappd, I think, is more of a symptom of what was happening already.
And I think it was also amplification of what exactly had been happening for decades.
It was faster and it was
easier.
It was what tech companies or like social media companies like that try to do. Make it like frictionless.
Right.
And so how do you do that? You don't have to write a review. Just put caps on it. And there's certainly that drove part of it. And there's certainly breweries then and to this day that look at their Untappd ratings and think that's the number one metric for what should be and shouldn't be made.
I also think that a lot of this was just because craft beer became hot for a moment, and this was the most approachable. It was one of the two extreme styles that was kind of like the bookends of craft beer. The bookends for craft beer were IPAs and stouts. So you could, in a lot of way, say the same thing, except you can't drink that much stout.
Right.
You just can't drink that much. So the sales of IPA are always going to be better. And those people lining up. I mean, talk about people lining up. They line up for stouts, and the fact that they were lining up for IPAs was an anomaly that has quickly gone away.
Right.
So I don't know if I think it's just the popularity and people like you always talk about, like the concentric circles of a target. Craft beer had hit this moment where it was cool and people wanted to be cool,
right?
And they wanted to drink the rarest and the hypest stuff, and because those people suck and they always have sucked.
But breweries also figured out what was selling faster, and what was selling faster were things that tasted more like juice and more like things that people were familiar with, and less like the bitterness of things before it. And so it was a confluence of beer being popular and people coming to beer, and there being way much more breweries than there were in the past, and everyone moving more quickly towards what they think the consumer wanted based on their Untappd ratings and the lines that formed for higher ABV, sweeter, more. So yeah, I mean, like, it's a confluence of those things, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in the final part now. Today, however, the trading, line waiting, Untappd rating, also the trading has been around for a long time.
Right.
I think we might have gotten one of the only pickups of Fade Master just then on the mic. Today, however, the trading, line waiting, Untappd rating, Haze Bros are finally being understood for what they really are, a tiny subset of beer drinkers that shouldn't wield the power they once did.
I think she should listen to the podcast more because we've been talking about that for a long time.
I would never recommend anyone to try to established themselves now with 15 different IPAs. That was a quote. Says Wild East co-founder Brett Taylor, whose own brewery represents a renewed emphasis on traditional European styles that have become de rigueur in craft beer. You need to show balance unless you can be a hot commodity and get on the hype train. To be the next other half, a lot of people have tried, but it's a style where you have to move a ton really fast. The same way West Coast IPA drinkers experience palate fatigue and turn to sweeter New England IPAs, now craft beer drinkers too are looking to get back to basics with German and Czech lagers. They want variety and lighter options on tap. Even the IPA is welcoming a broad spectrum back into its zeitgeist, notes Weiss, with a swing back to bitterness with the cold IPA and a renewed interest in West Coast IPA, plus a growing segment of low and no alcohol options. Outside of the small craft beer audience, Andrea Hernandez, author of food and beverage trend newsletter Snacks Shot, argues that drinkers have moved on altogether. Hernandez sees the, quote, off-the-rails flavors big companies are putting into their seltzers as the current wave of unhinged beverages, succeeding the likes of the milkshake IPA. The IPA, quote, the IPA guy stereotype, so the quote is, the IPA stereotype, but it was the stereotype is what the quote is, but it's in parentheses, the IPA guy stereotype has evolved into the hard seltzer persona. We've gone beyond the stereotype of the IPA because it's become irrelevant. Now it's the White Claw or the Truly guy. Of course, obsessive haze seekers still exist, but whether their ranks have shrunk or people just pay less attention, their online chatter is no longer a din. The IPA might still be cringe, but for a different reason now. It's kind of embarrassing to even care that much about it.
Is that the end of the article?
That's the end of the article.
I mean, isn't that what I've been saying for a long time, that I feared that people that got into beer with hazy IPAs and then drank the bigger, hazier IPAs were just going to leave beer and become
That's what you said.
the seltzer guy. Yeah.
You did say that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you feared that. I think you just predicted that. Did you fear it?
I mean, so if your premise for opening a brewery is that more people filling the funnel means more people are going to get to my brewery,
or like they're all going to go from haze to
West Coast
to
Pitt,
right.
and then we're all going
cold
to go
IPA,
through that
Czech
cycle
dark
we were
lager
talking about.
to
Right.
I just don't.
I think a lot of people
just moved on entirely.
A lot of people started their breweries and funded their breweries thinking that look at how well these things are doing. Look, it's like those people aren't ever going to come to your lager brewery. Like those people are going to move on to whiskey or move on to seltzer or move on to Michelob Ultra when they start running marathons or whatever like their next personality is.
Right.
So it's a fundamentally different consumer. I think it's a fundamentally different consumer than the person that was drinking the super bitter IPAs in the mid-early 2000s. Like, because that person then probably went like, you know what I really like? I like Trumer. Like then they still kept drinking Trumer. They didn't go. I'm drinking a 200 IBU Stone beer, and it's not really that great. But you know what? I'm going to go and drink a more bitter something else.
No, they just needed an excuse to drink the fruitiest thing they possibly could. And when someone says "ain't no loss when you're drinking claws," they're like, perfect. That's all I need.
I can shoot. I can shoot the top off
goodness.
With a gun.
Well, so
cool,
I won't look. Yeah, it won't be girly
sweet.
or something. If I drink a White Claw, fine, done.
Well,
Same
it's
with
also
Natter Days.
It was liking craft beer was in the 200 IBU days was part of your personality, and maybe that was like broy and toxic, but it was different than like I liked IPAs when they were juicy and hazy, and then I just wanted the juiciest, haziest thing. I don't know what the toxic masculine part of that is.
Or I guess like is a toxic masculine. Like, is bourbon now the toxic masculine thing?
Maybe.
I guess.
Or just like the bro culture around, like, we're going to drink 1,000,000 high noons and punch each other. Like, I don't know. Just like,
I guess
do general male debauchery.
One of the differences, though, is that the White Claw guy and the Truly guy, they're probably equally numbered or close to it by the White Claw girl and the Truly girl. So that might be one difference.
Sure.
Because craft beer has always leaned heavily male, I think, compared to seltzer and wine.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So mean, maybe that's why that. But I mean, I think she does a pretty accurate history of how kind of IPA came about.
Yeah.
There's just some causal stuff that I do have some problems with. So I guess I should, for the average person, it really does go through IPA very
well.
It's
and there might be
so
some stuff
attacking,
that
so
were
aggressive.
Maybe some stuff that we're attributing as causal that she might not necessarily be thinking she's writing it as causal. Like,
Right.
It's like this happened, then this happened, and then this person is strung out of that, and it's just like not as clear. Like, I don't know if she's asserting cause to all of that, but yeah, there's certainly some stuff in there. It's like some through lines that I don't necessarily think are fully through lines.
Well, here's the main through line that I have, which is like the style itself is cringe. Like, I guess it's because you hear someone say, "Oh, I drink IPAs," and that's like, "Oh, you're one of those people."
Well, this is also, again, I think this is a New York issue where, like, if Don Bixel on this podcast, he would tell you IPA is the best-selling style of beer by a bazillion miles versus any other style of beer. And
Right.
It's wonderful that Wild East makes fantastic mixed culture beer and great lager, but that's not representative of what's happening in a larger sense.
And you can also say that, like,
And maybe it's cringe to be mainstream, is what the
Maybe.
is like in Brooklyn.
but I mean, I'll tell you, and I'm not saying like I drink these styles, okay? So I'm not trying to say anything. But if someone said, "Oh, I drink English style milds, grisettes, and Italian pilsners," talk about cringe. If someone said that to me, I'd be like,
Sure.
"What?"
Well, no one says that though, like, right? Like, no one walks in here and says, "I only drink these 3 styles." And says
But like,
that.
oh, I like a lot of styles. I like English milds. I like Italian pilsners. I like,
So, I mean,
just trying to come up with like the most esoteric things on purpose.
right?
That's cringe too. I mean,
Sure.
I guess nobody. There's nobody doing that. I guess.
I think like yeah, right. I think also like a fundamental.
Just being. I think the whole thing is like if you're pretentious, you suck, right? Like if you're pretentious over your IPAs, you suck. If you're pretentious about beer, you suck.
I don't know if that's the tone of the article. I think the tone of the article is more like it's better to be pretentious. Like
It's better to be pretentious, and also that.
Well, and I'm on record on this podcast saying I don't hate being pretentious. Like,
Yeah.
I had a very much more adept defense of it, but I don't think pretentious is as bad as a lot of people make it out to be.
Okay.
As long as it's genuine, which I think is part of why pretentiousness is maligned, because it's not always genuine. But wanting to like things that you think are more interesting than you actually currently are able to assess as why they're interesting is okay. Like, to want to drink Italian pilsners and to want to drink mild simply because other people are drinking IPA and you want to figure out something new and different for you, that's great. Mm-hmm. To drink it simply because other people are drinking IPA and you just want to be completely different, that's like there's nuance there that I'm probably not describing particularly well, but I think this article is more thinking that you should be drinking those styles, and that those styles are, and making Czech lagers is more noble than making IPA. That's like,
Sure.
Isn't that what that?
I guess
that's
it
my takeaway
insinuates
from it.
that for sure.
And the thing that's
I
cringe.
think the monoculture. I mean, here's the other thing. For all the stuff that's said here, I mean, how many of these things have we reiterated on this show? Like a million times. Like the monoculture. We've been talking about the monoculture since episode 1 of this show. The fear before there even was one. The fear is a monoculture,
Right.
And then it happened, and we're backing out of it slowly. But
right, but we're also like we're backing out of it slowly, but we also killed a lot of things, right? Like a lot of the actual original versions of styles, which is something you had been saying, and I was like, oh, but you can also get like a local version, and now I understand more what you're talking about. Like, if they don't import, I don't know what London Pride or something, like,
right.
And you can't get it from the source, whether or not that's better than the local one, you want to drink the original one and experience what that is, not something that's been filtered through a lot of different
Right.
people's opinions of what an ESB should be, or what
Sure.
they think, what version of an ESB they think they can sell in this market. Like, so the monoculture is become, as I think we're coming out of it, but it has
Yeah.
certainly affected the way we come out of it. Right, we're looking at Xeroxes of some of these styles.
Yes, for sure. I mean, talk about something that is now starting to get my goat a little bit, which is styles that, to me, are based on singular beers. I'll put Czech Dark Lager. I'll put two of the most popular recent styles, Czech Dark Lager, Italian Pils. Let me just go and say, if we're talking about like how styles develop, they're not styles.
Right.
You're copying a singular beer.
Right.
And you don't want to say this is a Tipo Pils style Pilsner. You want to say this is an Italian style Pilsner.
Right.
You don't want to say this is the
Ufleco.
Ufleco
Yeah.
Czech Lager. You want to say it's a Czech Dark Lager.
Right.
There's one example of it. Well, there are other Czech Dark Lagers, but everyone is doing it based on Ufleco.
But
everyone is doing Tipo Pils or Pivo Pils, which is a direct
rip off of Tip Tipo.
Inspired.
Sure. But
admittedly.
Right. But there is marketing utility to why you don't say this is an Ufleco style lager.
Let's go with another one, Grisette.
Most people don't
nobody
know
knows what that style is either.
Grisette's made up, but
right, exactly.
But no one, and most people don't know. More people know what Pivo is than Tipo. More people know what Czech Dark Lager is than Ufleco. So there's marketing language to that, right? Where a Czech Dark Lager, like, builds the image in someone's mind of like, oh, it's this kind of probably a bohemian dark lager, and they know what that is. They won't know what a new Fleku lager is. So it's not like people are trying to hide that influence. It's that they're like, no one's going to, like, I can't say like a Blaugie style ale, right? Like, no one's going to know what that, if I say like a Saison or something that might be more people will understand that. Farmhouse ales even further. Mm-hmm. But like there's utility to that, right? You can't just say this is Orval.
Well, I think it is. I wonder how much history there is to that, where styles were just created by people just trying to copy a singular beer. I mean,
Pilsner, man, like that's like the most dominant beer style in the world was just copying a singular beer.
You're saying,
and if you dig back far enough, of course, everything starts as one singular beer.
Well, I guess. I mean, I guess somebody brewed the first beer.
Right, sure, but like someone brewed the first pale lager.
True.
Right, and like, so there might be parallel thinking or different ideas about it, but like, if you dig back far enough, it's like everyone's just making their update on Urquell.
Everyone's just ripping off Pilsner Urquell.
Right.
Got it.
I mean, okay. It's fair to say it's also not fully descriptive of what's happening.
Right. Well, it seems to me that I guess that these styles have just been. I think it's to me it seems grasping. Like you're grasping for something new. So you're like, I like this beer, so we're gonna make it a style. And because I think maybe style sells. Is that what it is? Style sells?
Well, style is a marketing tool to set up or expectations, and then you either deliver on them or you subvert them in a way that delights people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's my opinion of style.
That's a pretty good definition of it. I like it. I mean, I haven't fully taken it in, but okay. Well, let me say this. It definitely got me thinking quite a bit. So I want to thank author Courtney Eisman.
Yeah, it's definitely different than most beer journalism I've been reading.
For sure. But yeah, I just don't. I don't know if people hate IPAs. Are IPA cringe?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you: is IPA cringe? I think a certain amount of IPA is cringe and not.
I guess
right.
Maybe I'm too old
you and
to
I
know
don't
what
engage
cringe
with.
means.
I think we also just don't really engage with the styles of IPA that would be cringe. Mm-hmm. Like we're drinking another one by Maine, right? And then we all love that, but we're not. Like, I don't think you guys even have the styles on draft hardly ever that would be like. There's no milkshake IPAs on here. There's no bad hazy.
We've
IPA.
had them on.
Sure, but there's no like bad hazy IPAs that get on the board here. Yeah. Like there's ones that you and I might not like and we might not drink much of, but there's not like like marshmallowy, like cringy, like pandering things that we just don't engage. They get made, but you and I just don't engage with them. I think that part of it is cringe. But there's certainly or cringe. I think I might be too old to know what cringe really
cringe
means. Too.
I guess shitty, lame. I guess
just like it's got to be. It's what is it? Serge? You're probably younger. You're smarter than us. It's this feeling of like really like that's. I don't know if you should be doing that. Like that's what to me what cringe feels like. Like that's not like that's not where it's at.
An embarrassment for someone else's behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
So is this article saying that when they see people ordering an IPA, full stop, it's cringe. They cringe for them. That it's like embarrassing that person would still be ordering IPA when they can have Italian Pils and
caring about IPA is cringe, is what they're saying.
I always default to caring about anything is cool. So, but, I don't know.
I mean, I think it's unsaid in the article, and I think if it's how she felt, I wish she would have said it. I think it's caring about it at the expense of caring about anything else in craft beer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that if that's the thesis of that,
I mean, that's the pretentious prick. I mean, that's the guy in Mr. Show. Now I'm going to have a reference that's 30 years old, and it's the guy who only listens to music on vinyl on his little old like Edison phonograph, and it's if someone said I only drink, I mean, what could be amber ales or something like that. If you say it,
that gotta be cool though. I'd like to talk to that dude.
But if you say it in the same way that Haze Bros say it about IPA, then you're an asshole. If it's like those are just what I like malt-driven, low-alcohol beer. But you could also say I love those creamy, super hoppy, low bitterness IPAs. I just love them. I mean, I know two people who are incredibly, they're professors. And they've been into beer longer than I have. They've drank everything. They love hazy IPAs. They've loved that development, and they still drink them. They just really appreciate them and the subtleties and the nuances even between them way more than me. And I tell them I don't really care that much about them. But they're not cringe because they like a whole bunch of different beer.
I think that the tacit implication that of those people being like not the people you're talking about, but the people that this article is creating or saying exists. The tacit implication they give that IPA is the ultimate style and is the best version
without
of craft
knowing
beer.
Anything and not wanting to know anything.
Right, and this being like, I love IPAs. Like that vibe is what is cringe, and and that is cringe.
It is cringe.
It's
now,
sad. It makes me sad for those
the
people.
article also goes further to say that it implies that somehow the style itself lends it to that it's like stylistically it just lends to more, I guess, charlatans, bros, drinking it.
Maybe. I don't know if I agree with that. If that
the article says that, or that IPA is more than other styles.
The latter.
Okay.
Because I think there's so much of IPA that's not that way. And this is remember, like, if we go back, rewind this podcast like 5 or 6 years, I would be talking all the time about signal and noise. There's probably so much more volume of IPA that isn't that than there is of almost any other style being made in American
Which
craft
was mentioned,
beer.
I think she said, that you realize that they were a tiny but loud subset.
Yeah.
And again, you make a good point about it being New York. I mean, maybe that's just what New York is like. I mean, New York sucks in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't be surprised if it sucked that way too. New York's great in a lot of ways too. I'm not
just
hating on New York.
More extremes of that kind of thing.
Philly, but yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if finance bros came in and were acting like that, I haven't ever seen that. But if they were, well, you know me, I would be
All over it.
I would. Yeah.
What kind of job do you have? How do I get one?
Right.
What type of suit is that? That's sick.
Wow, that looks expensive. How much was that?
Yeah.
Can I afford one?
Let me, as you sit here in your tie-dyed hoodie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just think it's a different environment entirely. And they think it's the best city in the world.
Let's see what I had. Another beer shirt underneath my hoodie. This is a Steak Industries hoodie, baby.
As I can tell, it's very high quality.
Yeah.
Steak Industries is going to be at Half
It's
Acre.
a Christmas market
Their Christmas market.
with Dark Matter.
Yeah, this weekend after the last weekend.
Hey, you know where else I
the
was
show
last
comes out.
weekend? Let's go back to the beginning before you get out of here. And congratulate Spiteful for their 10th anniversary. I was
Yeah.
there on Saturday.
We were
It was
battling. I
great.
didn't make it up there, but I heard it was a good time.
Yeah, I saw Kevin Carey there. It was cool. A lot of people were there.
Yeah, 10 years of spite.
Yeah, man. It was great. They have an anniversary beer out. Bitter, broy IPA, 6%. Very, very good.
2009 bro IPA though.
Yes.
It's a different brand of bro.
Yeah, it was. It was. Are we done? Anything else we want to talk about?
I think we're done.
All right. Well,
Serge, anything you want to plug?
no, he doesn't want to plug anything.
Okay.
He's not allowed to plug anything. All right. Well, we'll be
literally
back
plugs
before
all
the
of
end of
his
the year.
stuff
We're going to
every
at least
day.
have a year-end show, but we got a couple other shows we'll be playing, but we'll see when this one comes out. Anyway, we'll see you soon. So long, guys.
Bye.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, again,